Thank you, Eric Zimmerman, for joining us today, the founder and technical director at the Buddy Project. And Eric, you've also written 2 ebooks on what it's like to be on the spectrum. And you've also toured all around the world educating parenting groups on autism. So thank you for joining me today.
Yes, anytime.
I appreciate it. So you and I were chatting and we were talking about how it feels to be autistic and understanding what that means for social differences. And for my patients, I'm not autistic, but for my patients, I know just developing and maintaining and understanding those social relationships can be overwhelming and difficult at some time. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about your own experience. So are you ready to just jump in?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. So when my patients are younger, and what I often see is that, when they're very young, there's a lot of parallel play and a lot of active play. So there's not a lot of back and forth, kind of this talking back and forth, staying on topic, all these things that kind of seem to be complicated later. But when things do change, when they get a little bit older, you find that it's just a lot more complicated. So what was your experience as far as being younger? And do you remember when it was easier to play with friends?
I've only had one true friend, and he was in middle school and in high school. We're still friends today, but of course he has his own life and he had a job and a girlfriend, but when he was my best friend, and him and I we were really into like wrestling. I was always big into racing. He was not. Still into racing as like my number one passion. But him and I always would play games together. Sometimes he'll be on one console and I'll be on another. But that was my true friend. I had a lot of difficulty in elementary school making friends. No one really, sometimes people would talk to me, but they generally the kids would just kind of just leave me alone. I would just kind of if anything, they would like bully in some way or whatnot. But I really didn't have a good way of making friends. I kind of more or less played by myself at home. If I did go out, especially when it comes to middle school, if I did go out, I would go to there's some kids that lived up the street from me. I lived in a subdivision. There's some kids that lived up the street from me. I would hang out with them, but they would always have ways that they would kind of take advantage of me or whatever. But I felt it was better than staying inside and playing the Nintendo all the time. So I kind of took it as it was. I did a lot of playing. I was really into racing, so I had my own fantasy racing league, and I would have, I'm not talking about like fantasy, like where you predict things. I'm talking about where I'd play with die-cast cars on racetracks that I would draw out on the porch or whatever, and a lot of individual play like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so it sounds like you wanted to have those friendships, but they were difficult and, people weren't kind to you sometimes.
Yeah, no one would really, people were rather unkind. Yeah. I really wanted the relationships. I was diagnosed with ADD, with obsessive compulsive disorder in 5th grade, but my autism diagnosis didn't come to high school. But I had all of these telltale signs. I drew attention to myself. Like I had different, I had very strict interest on things. Trains was one thing I was really into. Still am. I have a model railroad that we haven't quite finished, but I have really into NASCAR, into any kind of racing, and that's the way I was when I was a kid. And the other kids just didn't really understand. I was also yeah, I want to know how to socially really interact with them. I would try, but then if I couldn't get any attention, sometimes I would go and get negative attention, such as drawing attention to myself through inappropriate things. I mean, it could be just something. It could be anything that I could do to get their attention. So I was attention seeking, just to make them, and that just added to them to say, well, them to bully me more, really.
Right.
But I had their attention, and I'd sometimes crack myself up as well. But yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. So I can't say that it was really until high school that things kind of got better. I wanted to be a computer technician. I really wanted to race when I was a small child, but because of where we lived and where I grew up, where I lived, and the money aspect, I wasn't able to realize that. But it wasn't until high school that I had one friend, my friend Mark, and then I had it to where I kind of had a path that I was on to what I wanted to do with life. I wanted to become a computer technician. I had no clue that I was going to specialize in working on refurbishing equipment and working with people with disabilities. And it wasn't until late high school, about 11th grade, that I was diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum. That was just, there wasn't a lot known about people higher functioning. They thought that everyone who had autism they didn't speak, were very low functioning. It was, and a lot of those people were not even diagnosed as autistic. They were diagnosed as mentally retarded at the time, which is horrible. I'm kind of going off topic, but I have a friend who has a son who is nonverbal, and the state tried to diagnose him like that. But she was like, yeah, I'll take that diagnosis. That just means we'll get more money. But other than that, she says it's horrible because he can understand everything, and he's just not able to put it into words. But
That's really hard.
yeah, but back to me growing up, the telltale signs are there. My fascinations with things. School was boring to me. I didn't enjoy school until I got into high school, and I kind of knew what I wanted to do. And then, like I said, once the hormones kind of hit with puberty, it wasn't fun. And so I had about 2 or 3 years of that where, until I got on a certain medication regimen to kind of help make the symptoms kind of go away. Just wanting to draw attention, not caring about anything, being angry easily. I had a lot of problems at home with my parents. And then once we finally, not caring about school, and once we finally were able to get some of those things under control, I just really soared. And then it wasn't until right before I graduated, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder.
And so did you think that makes more sense, right? Like it kind of all comes together.
Yeah, it makes more sense, but by that time, the school system had already failed me. I mean, not literally, as in failed as in grades, but it failed me in services. The colleges that they didn't want to accept me, because even though I was on grade level and had decent grades, they weren't the best grades, but decent grades to get in their school, they didn't want to accept me because I was in the IEP classes or special needs classes. They thought that I was going to be at risk to them, that I wasn't going to finish, and that looks bad on their statistics. So they sent me to a community college, which I did not do well with because they didn't have a very good program at the time for people with special needs. And it just scared me away. But yeah, the education system as well as the healthcare system failed me, and didn't really set me up for the success that I wanted. I have success in a different way. I've done a lot of things, helped a lot of people. Don't have a lot of money, but I want to change it. So in a way, things happen for a reason.
Well, you definitely had lots of different experiences. And so, I want to speak to when you had mentioned earlier about elementary school. It sounded like that was really difficult for you. Something that I hear, and it's just such a misunderstanding, is that, of course, autistic people, they're all different, just like every person
Yeah.
is different. But did you find that there was just this misunderstanding where, like, oh, autistic people don't care to make friends? And I don't find that in my work at all. I feel like a lot of my patients, they want desperately to make friends. This is incredibly important to them, but it's hard and it's confusing. And how do you do this thing?
Yeah, we don't have the time to really go into, because it's bringing up some other things. We really don't have time to go into it. But I can tell you many examples of people in the autism spectrum that want to make friends and try to reach out in some way. But yeah, I really wanted to have friends and be involved, and I really wanted to fit in and be like the other kids. But we had no clue what was going on in the elementary school. We knew I had these temper tantrums, obsessive, like they're just temper tantrums that were more than what other children would have. I didn't always get along well with others. I tried, I wanted to, and the kids, other kids, like I said, they would bully me. Um, so I really had a difficult time, but again, we didn't know. We didn't know what it was. And early on, my parents didn't really tell me. Like I knew there was something different about me than of the other kids. I'm like, why? Why do I have such a difficult time? There's something different. But my parents never told me about, okay, this is, you're diagnosed with this, you're diagnosed with that. Even though it was an autism spectrum disorder, I was diagnosed with ADD. And then by the time I realized I was diagnosed really with having anything was fifth grade, when the hormones really started to kick. And I started seeing a therapist, and he was like, yeah, this sounds like this. And yeah, and then I went to a psychiatrist, and no psychiatrist was ever helpful with me with those things until probably the beginning of high school. But they actually wanted to put me into an institution at one point. They wanted to put me into Shepherd Pratt. Shepherd Pratt's a huge health network here in the Maryland area, and they wanted to put me in one of their residential schools. So it was going to be a hospital and a school together. And my parents were like, no, we're not doing that. So thankfully, but yeah, that's, I really didn't know until later, but I always knew from the beginning that I was different than other kids. And then there's always times in school where they treat you a little different, or you'll be put with a certain group of kids. I wasn't in special needs classes at the time. This is an elementary school, but I would work with the special needs staff. And I thought that was kind of strange. But then it wasn't until middle school that I was put in special needs classes, because in sixth grade, I really had a problem with when I went into school. Um, there was a big change from elementary to the middle school. Of course, I didn't like neither school, but I wanted to sit home and play my games. But you start, instead of being in one class all day, you would have to go to different classes in middle school. And I was in mainstream classes. And what I would always do is I would always ask the teacher to use the bathroom and to get out of class. And I would just roam the hallway. And then I would go back to class, and the first period teacher usually had no problem with it. I liked it. He was pretty cool. But I think I was like the third period teacher, the lady who the math teacher had a problem with. She was on to me. And so one day she's like, yeah, you can't get used to the bathroom. You can't. You're not allowed to. So I said, okay, I'll show you. And I wet myself. And so then they sent me to the health room. They called my mother and said, Mrs. Zimmerman, you got to come get your kid. And she came and got me. And then I realized, oh, I'm on to something. If I keep doing this, then I don't have to be in school. So
That was pretty effective.
it was pretty effective in that, and it was like a rebellious thing. Originally, it was just rebellious against the teacher originally, but then I learned like, oh, this could be something more. And all along, they knew it was behavior related. It wasn't. There wasn't anything medically. It was a psychological thing. Um, but they had my mom, they'll get me screened with a urologist, have tests done, make sure everything is fine, everything's working fine. Because the doctor honestly can't just sit there and ask me as like an adult, like, yeah, what's this going on? You have these symptoms. The only thing they knew is that I was urinating myself. And finally, it got to be to where they had the school support lady called my mom and said, keep your son home. We'll send his classwork home. And then we worked through it. And then finally, they brought me back into school, and I was put in special needs classes. And then part of the time I was educated at home. So I had like one class at home and 2 classes in school, a very abbreviated schedule. And so we did it like that. And I actually liked that. I still had a lot of behavior problems, but I really liked the teacher, and I really liked the setup, so I kind of just went along with it. I played ball, and I guess you would say. And then the 7th grade, I finally told them, which I knew. I was like, I've just been doing this on purpose. And then the 7th and 8th grade, they had me full-time in special needs classes, but it was being run by a person who had no clue how to run. She's a science teacher, really, but they really needed a special needs instructor. And so they put all these kids, and a lot of these kids, they weren't necessarily on the autism spectrum. They didn't really have any problems related to being special needs classes. They all had behavior problems, or they have problems with stuff at home, or, but they lumped us all together. And, because we're different, and they just, actually, I can tell you, at one point I had straight Fs, and they were passing me on to the next grade. So it was a detention center, really. They just kind of just kept you in, and that's the way middle school was. And I had still had hard times making friends, but I wanted to be around other people. And then high school got better. Like I said, there's medication. I got on some medications, and then I finally learned I was on the autism spectrum, and I kind of like, that really explains, a lot. And then, but I still struggled to make friends, and then, of course, as a high school student, especially late high school, I had interest in girls, which really, and then actually, even into my early 20s, that I had a lot of hard time, finding dates or going, meeting people. Wasn't trying to meet anyone for sex. I just wanted a friend, mainly.
Yeah, and it can be, and I don't know about from your point of view, but, I find that, even there are some neurotypical people that do really well, and some neurotypical people who are shy and concerned about rejection. And so it's interesting when I talk to autistic people, it just seems so much more difficult, to be able to figure this out. And after you mentioned feeling socially rejected so many times before that, really taking that risk and putting yourself out there anyway.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother story about how my whole love life went. But it was really, I was not afraid to go and try to make friends, whether male or female. But then when it comes to the female friends that made me want it more from, I could go and say, hey, would you like to, exchange emails, let's chat. But then it was, I noticed, I look back, actually, it's funny. I've been on Facebook since, because now we're talking about the end of high school, but I've been on Facebook since like 2005. I can go back to some of the messages when I would message certain people I've met, that just, hello, hi, how are you? And I wouldn't really know how to interface with them, because what it was is I would tell them everything about myself, not anything inappropriate, but just like my interest, all of my, just things, just like, it was a little overwhelming. I would tell them about my family, and I think it just, some people was like really, and I wanted to be liked, so sometimes I would send gifts. There's this one girl in particular, she was in no way understanding. She was willing to be my friend and get to know me, but then when I would friend her friends on Facebook, because I'd friend everyone on Facebook, and then when I would send her a gift or something, she'd be like, this is weird. Yeah, so I had definitely a lot of problems with that.
So what would you, in your journey, how did you cope with those differences? Because you were saying that, you knew that you were different. You didn't quite know why. You knew you were a little bit different. And then you mentioned, kind of feeling angry and frustrated. And how did you cope with all of that?
Well, I just kind of rolled with it. I always knew that there was something different about me, and it wasn't until late high school, that I was diagnosed with ASD. But I had a lot of problems at home with getting angry with my dad and my mom, usually over nothing, and then I couldn't control myself. It was like almost having like a seizure, but it was just an anger or temper tantrum, over nothing. And then I usually end up hitting the wall, or sometimes even striking my father. And and then afterwards, I'd calm down, and then, I knew the psychiatrist wanted to put me into a more or less a hospital, like I was saying. And I knew what was going on was bad. I didn't like it, but I didn't know how to control it. And it was, we tried different chemicals, different drugs, and they didn't work. Actually, if anything, it scared me, because the one medication they put me on, and they, had to get my blood drawn, and that was that was something else. And then finally, in the beginning of high school, I met this guy, and he kind of saved my life, I would say, because he prescribed me the right medication, and I just kind of made a 180 from wearing jogging pants and a t-shirt. I went from doing that to dressing nicely and showering, because I wasn't showering at the beginning of high school. I wasn't drawing attention to myself. Kids used to be able to come up and bully me and just like poke me, and I'd be like, leave me be, And then once I was on this medication, and a few months into it, kids would try to do that, and I just look at them, and they would be like, why aren't you reacting that way? So it really helped calm my hormones. I had something on my mind. Kind of bring down the effects of my hormones, but yeah, I had something on my mind about when I was diagnosed. Oh, yeah, when I was diagnosed. So now I got it. How I was diagnosed was actually by chance. The guy who originally put me on the medications that helped me, I was starting to have a little bit of problems where I would have like some anxiety and OCD symptoms, and we tried to fine tune some things, but weren't able to do it. I was also feeling really bad. I was having some problems, and I would always make sure I got all my schoolwork done, took it home with me if I had to, but I was having different issues, and this is towards the later part of puberty. And I was having a lot of issues there, but I still, as far as school goes and at home, I was fine. I was still doing fine, but I wanted to fine tune some things. And this doctor was like, I can't do anything more to help you. So I went to see this other doctor, and he's the kind that would also do therapy. He's the old school psychiatrist. And him, we would talk, and I was really involved with this nonprofit at the time, especially towards the end of high school. A particular nonprofit that takes people with disabilities and put them in one-to-one friendships with people that are not disabled. Sure, you know which one that is. But anyway, I was working with them a lot. I was really involved with them, and even went to like their leadership conference, was really into trains and racing. And one day I was talking to this doctor, and he says, Eric, he says, I think you need to talk with my wife. My wife is a therapist, and she deals with a lot. You remind me of a lot of kids that she works with. You need to go and see her. I think you have autism spectrum. I think you have Asperger's at the time. So, okay. And so I went to see her, and she was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you have it. And then I went through different kinds of testing. And then finally I was diagnosed by the state. I went to the state, and the state did a psychological evaluation and whatnot. And I was diagnosed by both the therapist and as well as the state of Maryland. So, but yeah, that's how that all went.
And you've had, I really appreciate you going through that experience, because you're helping so many other people. And what I'm hopeful with this podcast too, Eric, is that, a lot of parents are listening. And kids that may not be able to communicate while they're younger what you're communicating now, right? So it sounds like, you're in a position where you've had that experience and you've been through that, and then you can almost educate parents and, again, educate those professionals of, look, we've got to look past this. Why are there maybe challenging behaviors happening? Why is this child sort of standing around people on the outside? What's happening for them that's making this so hard? So I think of it, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are, but I think of it as not only, us sort of coming together, but, really educating neurotypical people about what is happening, and to not make these assumptions, and to be educated on what, autism spectrum is.
Yeah. You see a lot of those memes on Facebook, or sometimes like, no, you look at me when my kid's throwing a tantrum in the store, like my kid's undisciplined, but actually you really don't know what's going on in his head, with the overstimulation of sounds, feeling, touch, and that's why the kid's having a meltdown. And I even have problems to this day about I have problems until this day with noise. Certain noises really get on my nerves. I can listen to a lot of music, no problem, but it's I can go to races, no problem. It's like the fine noises I can hear from like that's in another room, or that really bother me. It's someone clips their nails, gets on my nerves. Someone eats, if depends on their eating habit, gets on my nerves. If someone they have a bowl or something they're eating out of, and they're trying to get the last part of what they're eating and scraping it, that drives me batty. So yeah.
And I think that, when we're talking about socially, where that would be really irritating for you, to be feeling comfortable communicating that, and then to whoever is receiving that from you being open to completely understanding and then modifying their behavior, because that would be really hard for you.
Yeah, recently my mother's, I would say, and it got so bad actually in the past few years to where and I find this is another like psychological thing, where if I don't expose myself to it and keep exposing myself to it, that it's not something that I'm going to really be able to deal with. And the more I retreat from it, the worse it gets. But I would actually, for the times I am actually home working, um, or I'm on the road. If I'm not on the road and I'm home and I'm able to spend some time with my parents in the evening, um, that they like to have a snack. Usually, my mom loves ice cream. I do too, but she likes ice cream or yogurt, and she'll put it into a bowl and she'll scrape. And it wasn't until recently that my mom's like, you know what, let me try some plastic, maybe just a plastic bowl, even if I use a metal spoon, something that will kind of ease that, and it works. And
That's awesome.
so, but it's always something that they just thought I was just being a jerk or something about for the longest time. And I try to explain to them. And also there's things, even if I have to go to bed early, our house is designed in a way that we have an open foyer, and in my bed, then we have a catwalk, and my bedroom is kind of back in a corner, but it still, I have to leave my door open. And some nights it's hard for me to go to sleep if they're watching TV. And it's just, sometimes it's difficult, but I don't go and bother them. They say, why don't you say something? It's like, because I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude and kind of, I'm very fortunate, even though I don't think my dad really has a complete, he might understand 50% of what's going on with me. My mother understands way more because my mom was my main caretaker and whatnot. But my dad's kind of just like, yeah, he, whatever, he's different. But anyway, he really truly doesn't understand the disorder. He'll see someone else struggling with something, and he'll say, well, maybe they say they have autism or something. No, Dad, that they don't have autism. They have this. My dad's older. He's in his 70s. But anyway, my dad and my dad in particularly has been the breadwinner in our family. And, I don't want to be disrespectful, or be as least disrespectful as possible to them. So
I would imagine that's kind of a hard thing to balance when you were talking about, you don't want to be socially rude, right? Because I've heard so many people thinking my patients or my son who's autistic are rude. I'm like, whoa, actually, it's not. They're trying to tell you what's happening for them, but you're not listening.
So what I would do, what I would do instead of being rude is I would start to retreat.
Right.
I just go and do my own thing. But I'm like, well, we're only getting older. My parents are getting older. I want to spend time with them. And, between my speaking and visiting my wife, I'm not home a lot anymore. It's difficult because my mom has some health problems, and my dad, he's old. 9 years older than my mother, but he's healthy. But my mom, I really want to spend time with her while I can, and it's hard. But to really say, hey, this is what's getting on my, this bothers me. Can we? And then a lot of times they're understandable, but then my dad just, he'll get upset and nasty about it and not understand. But that's, he just gets cranky. And then I had an issue one time. We run a program through our nonprofit called EXL. And what it does is takes people who have low income, and they can be disabled in a way that the Buddy Project doesn't support. And we provide them free computers if they make under $20,000 a year. So we get people with different physical disabilities, or just, they've been unable to find a job or whatever. They're not particularly disabled, but they just have a low income. And I had one person call me one time, not call me, but email me, because the way I have it set up is I have an email that I use for YouTube and whatnot. That's just used for that. I never use it for email. It's just a Gmail account that I use for that. Everything else is through my, Buddy Project domain, or I have an MSN account that I send all the junk mail gets sent to. But I have, for my Google account, main Google account on my phone, I use this one account, and I use a scheduling platform to schedule people, particularly for low income appointments, because I have to screen them. And this one individual messaged me because we needed to reschedule, or she needed to reschedule an appointment, or she needed to know what to bring. I think she needed to know what to bring. And I had a volunteer assistant. I'm in my office now, but she was sitting across from me, and my volunteer assistant. And so this person messages me, and I'm in the middle of doing all these other things. She messages me on this is the client, messages me on this Gmail account, which is a pain for me to go and get and check because I don't use it often. So she messaged me and she was asking me these questions. I was just being very straightforward with her, saying, hey, you need to bring, if you do have a disability, you need to bring any paperwork stating, or if you work with a social agency, bring any paperwork stating that, bring proof of your situation. And she, I think he said something, I forget exactly what it was, but I told her, I said, I'm sorry, I'm not able to talk much. I'm working on getting computers ready for people like you, and she just took that up as like really rude. She says, well, I don't need your computer then, but I said, I'm sorry, you felt I was being rude. I said, you can talk to so she called, as you can call this number, I told her. So she called my assistant, and my assistant was like, yeah, I'm sorry, he's on the autism spectrum. He just kind of says, just says how it is. And she also was trying to say that because we worked out of the house, and she said that she just felt like she was really creeped out by me. I'm like, I didn't really say anything that would have creeped her out, but my assistant handled it. I said, I'll just let you handle this, lady. But
sorry that happened. That must have been hard.
No, I kind of just laugh about it. I got angry at first, but now I just laugh about it.
Yeah, you probably have to have a pretty good sense of humor then. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because I definitely want to talk about the Buddy Project and your amazing nonprofit that you've started. But before that, do you have any advice to kids that are struggling socially? Like, I know you can see you are in a different place now with your age and your experience. Just maybe some advice that you could give them that, things can get a little bit better, for you, because sometimes when kids will tell me, and it's so hard, their brains are telling them, that nobody likes them and they'll never have friends. And I can't even imagine how difficult that would be.
Yeah, it's very hard, I think, if they can find someone or find some maybe social group or something that maybe they don't have close friends in that group, but at least they're interacting with people. That would be something. But one thing, I worked with the local ARC, and they took me and they wanted me, actually in my middle school that I went to, that I had the issue with urinating in my pants and being stuck in a classroom all day. They actually requested, they know about what I'm doing. They were told the local ARC, because they're taking me to different schools and explaining about autism. And they usually would do a simulation, just explain to the kids to kind of stop bullying, to the general just the general students. And then with me, one time my old middle school called me, not called me, but called them and wanted me to come and speak to the kids. It was actually reversed. They wanted me to go speak to the kids in the special needs class. And because the kids were having a real problem and really giving the teachers an attitude saying, well, why doesn't it matter if I do this? No one cares about me. I'm in what they call the pyramid program, because they kind of do less. I'm sure you're familiar with it. They put kids out in mainstream, and then they provide them with the support they need. They do it unlike what they did with me in school, just 31 classroom. You only go really into that classroom if you have to. And so anyway, they kind of, it's like as needed and more individualized supports. For me, so they wanted me to come in because these kids were like, well, it doesn't matter if I, do this. No one cares about me because I'm in the pyramid program, and whatnot. So they had me come in and talk to them, and I shared with them my life and what I was doing, what I'm doing, what I'm up to. And I said, I was once in this very school. I said, and this is what I'm doing. I said, don't worry, things suck. Life sucks, especially during this time. It can. And I said, but it gets better. And I said, once you get over this, these are the things I experienced, and this is how I progressed. And you can live a happy and productive life.
Wow. So you got to go back to your same school.
Yeah,
That's
the school I
amazing.
really struggled at. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. What an awesome testimony.
Yes. So, I mean, these kids, no matter if they're dealing with a mental illness or they're dealing with autism, no matter what their deal is, but they have the social issues as well as academic issues, things always get better. And the one thing you have to do is find that one passion in your life. What are you passionate about in life? And then try to involve yourself in that. And usually in high school, it gets easier because that program's kind of tailored to that. If you're interested in working with animals, volunteer with the animal shelter. If you're interested in cars, see if you can do something at a local garage, if someone would be willing to have you come in a day a week or whatever. And then in high school, see if you can get into the technology center. If you're interested in computers, if you want to work on them, see if you can get involved in technology center like I did. Or doing work in the summertime at some place. My local government actually has something where they take middle school and high school students that are low income and or disabled and put them into paid jobs and things that they're interested in. So
That's exciting.
So that's what I'm saying. Things always get better, and if you can find your passion and make something out of that in some way, things will get better.
I love that. And I'm really excited about sharing our conversation with my 15-year-old, because I know he has his passions, and it's actually writing rap music and rapping. And honestly, I don't know about that. So I do my best to learn and help him with that as much as I can, and let him know what I think about the lyrics if he asks me. And I think that's what we can do as professionals and parents is really support them in their passions. And I'm so glad that you had brought that up. So I definitely want to talk about the Buddy Project. So if you could tell us a little bit about that, and I'll definitely be having the links to your website, and other ways that people and listeners can support you in your mission.
Yeah, well, the Buddy Project is an organization based here in Frederick, Maryland. And what we do is we take computers that people are discarding. Businesses, they have a budget for computers, so many computers that they buy, sometimes every year, 2 years, 3 years. And what we do is we take them and we refurbish them and then put them in the homes of people with disabilities. And now, of course, like I mentioned earlier, to low-income individuals. And then the only way we raise money is through selling computers to the public, and come with a 4-month mechanical warranty. We recently kind of partnered a little bit with this whole virus thing. Things kind of slowed down, but we're partnering with a local distributor that we're actually a Lenovo dealer selling Lenovo computers, so we can drop ship Lenovo products off our website. Only the new Lenovos. Everything else has to be picked up in person here. But new Lenovos we can drop ship, and it supports our cause. But we also have people with disabilities, particularly on the autism spectrum, that come in to learn the A+ certification. They come in, they get job skills, they have something they can put on their resume, and they come in and they work here and they put these computers together, and then they help us. I actually have a guy who's my actual second in charge, who's also on the autism spectrum. And then, so we have maybe right now we probably have 6 volunteers. Usually I'm about 10 volunteers, but we had some turnover for different reasons. They're usually my one volunteer has been with me for quite a few years now, and he actually has a traumatic brain injury, but he's able to come, get job skills, and be productive in society and help people. So we really enjoy that. Then I do the autism awareness speaking. which is part of the organization, where I go around to parent support groups and I speak about life growing up on the autism spectrum. My recent tour, which a lot of my dates have gotten canceled, is talking about how I met my wife, found love on the autism spectrum, and also was able to go racing and find people to help me and to go racing. And so I talk about that.
That is so exciting. So, and you had shared with me when we met in person, the love story of you and your wife, which I absolutely love. And so I'm going to have to, I hope you come back and talk to me again about your love story, because I just think it's so beautiful.
Anytime.
I love it. We'll have to schedule it for sure. So I want to make sure that we're really clear about how our listeners of the Wired Differently podcast can support the Buddy Project. How could we best support the Buddy Project?
Well, if you're local in Maryland, DC, Delaware, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia area, that whole area, you can donate electronics to us. Thebuddyproject.org is how you can reach out to us. If you're anywhere else in the United States or in the world, you can donate funds at thebuddyproject.org as well. And there's another organization in Pennsylvania with a similar name, but they do suicide awareness and whatnot. So try not to get that confused. We're the Buddy Project. They go by Buddy Project. And so that's a recent thing that kind of been going on. But yeah, anyhow, that's how they can support us. They can spread the word. They're interested in having me at a parent support group. I do not charge any money to come to the conferences of support groups. Money that I raise or get donated or I raise through selling computers goes to support that. So, yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm actually working with the North Carolina Autism Society about actually you coming. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we can get past the coronavirus.
Yeah, it's really ate my schedule up.
Yeah. It's definitely been an adjustment. But I am looking forward to being able to see you in person again. And then I know that parents are going to be really excited about being educated. And just being able to hear your experience.
Yeah.
So thank you again so much, Eric. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're so busy. And thank you for committing to come back on to tell me about your love story.
I have nothing to do. Yeah, I have nothing to do this week. I have nothing to do for the next probably 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm in my house. I'm actually in jogging pants and a t-shirt. I'm usually dressed a little nicer.
Well, I think that we've all had to make just adjustments in our schedule. So we'll definitely be talking about, again, the way you met your beautiful wife. And I'm sure everyone will be interested in hearing that story.
Yes.
Well, you take care, Eric, and I will see you again soon.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Take care.
All content provided is protected under applicable copyright, patent, trademark, and other proprietary rights. All content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. No content is intended to be a substitute for professional medical or psychological diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Information provided does not create an agreement for service between Holly Blanc Moses Crossvine Clinical Group, the interviewee, Holly Blanc Moses LLC, and the recipient. Consult your physician regarding the applicability of any opinions or recommendations with respect to your symptoms or medical condition or the symptoms or medical condition of your family member. Children or adults who show signs of dangerous behavior toward themselves and/or others should be placed immediately under the care of a qualified professional.